Welcome back to the Golf Mom Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Nicole, and this is the place where we talk all things junior golf, parenting, and navigating this crazy and beautiful journey on the course with our kids. If you're a golf parent who wants to support your junior golfer, this is the place to be. Before we jump in, please be sure to make sure you are liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel, following us on Instagram, and if you found this episode helpful, please share via Spotify or Apple with another golf parent. Today, we're diving into a topic every golf parent should understand: golf fitness, injury prevention, and how kids can learn the right way to train for long-term success. And I have the perfect guest to join us today who's going to break it all down. My guest is Scott Shepard, a Central Florida-based, 4-time Digest Top 50 golf fitness trainer and sports physical therapist. He's the creator at AdventHealth Golf PFX program, a swing-based golf performance system focused on customized movement, mobility, strength, and speed training for golfers at every age and skill level. Scott is a trusted fitness trainer for many of Central Florida's top junior and professional golfers, working closely with elite junior academies and world-class instructors to design training programs that help athletes perform better, feel better, and stay healthy. He's also a respected educator who has spoken at major global golf conferences, trains and golf performance coaches and physical therapists, and serves as the golf fitness trainer for both Rollins College and Seminole State College women's golf programs. Scott has contributed as a writer to GOLFFOREVER, written for PGA.com, and is ambassador for many different affiliates, and sits on the advisory board for Golf Fitness Association of America. You're going to learn so much from Scott today, so let's get into it. Scott, I am so happy to meet you and have you here on the Golf Mom Mindset podcast. Can you share with our audience a little bit about your background you have already accomplished? And as a 4-time winner of a Golf Digest fitness trainer is a huge accomplishment. But can you talk about what got you started in the golf industry and what led you down the path to focus on fitness in golf?
Thanks for having me on. Excited about this podcast. The thing that got me into golf was, a lot of it was kind of pragmatism in a way, because I'm in Central Florida. So my background is I was an athlete. I played all the sports growing up, baseball, football, basketball was my main sport. But when I get into college, I wanted to get into sports rehab. So I'm a physical therapist. And so I went to physical therapy school. And one of the things that happens in Central Florida is you get a lot of clients coming in and you start learning about their sports. So a lot of our clients were golfers or tennis. So I really enjoyed golf because I felt like it was a sport that you could kind of dive deep into, all of the mechanics and the technical side of it and the way that the body works and moves. So I thought it was something I could really help golfers to be able to improve their technique by helping them move their bodies better. So I decided to specialize in that area. I was working for a company at the time that was providing services for the PGA Tour. So I was doing my sports physical therapy with them, and then they were training me more about golf. And then I happened to get connected with some really good coaches in the Central Florida area that kind of got me into the world of golf more, where I was seeing a lot more junior golfer. I traveled on the LPGA for about 8 years with a top player. And just, since then my roots have been in Central Florida. And I do work currently with a large healthcare group called AdventHealth. And I developed a golf performance and training program with them. And we're having a lot of success with it. We have a ton of junior golfers. We work with some of the top kids in the area. And it's just something that's maybe become a passion of mine. And developing these athletes and their sport and getting them to college scholarships and all these, future goals.
Amazing. And I'd like you to touch more on the program you developed, which I believe is called Golf PFX, if that's correct.
Yeah, that's correct. So Golf PFX is a program I partnered with and started working for AdventHealth, which is a large healthcare company. And they obviously offer orthopedic services and sports medicine and rehab services. But they also wanted to try to meet athletes where they are, meaning the wellness side of athletics, the preventative injury side, all of those things. So a lot of the work that I do in my program is tailored towards golf, but we also develop programs for other sports and runners. Runners are a big community in Central Florida. So we have these different programs. I'm doing the golf one because that's my background. And the idea was for us to be able to screen golfers give them custom exercises, work with their technical coaches on some specific areas they need to improve, and also just help them overall get more fit and healthy so they can play the game longer and just, be involved in the game for their life. Because we think of golf as a sport you can play for your life. And that's what we help people do is create exercise programs for them to help them.
It's fantastic.
I-
You mentioned, Scott, about working even with their coaches on the technical side. How does that work? Is that something where you talk to your client and say, what recommendations does your coach say? Do you actually get on the phone with their coach? And how do you make sure, people aren't stepping on toes or that you guys can work in sync together? Is there kind of a magic method behind that?
I think the magic method for me is understand that we look at the golf coach in the medical community. In my sports medicine practice, you think of the orthopedic physician as being kind of the leader. And in the golf world, we think of the golf swing instructor as being the leader. So as long as you have that as a clear role, then I think it's fine. Obviously, they're going to value my input from the physical side, but really, I'm not going to them and telling them what to do. I'm going to them and asking them, how can I help you? It's more like, okay, we have this student. What are some of the things they're struggling with in their golf swing? Are they losing their balance? Do they need more speed? Is there a sequencing issue? Do you just think they need to get stronger? And then I'll come alongside and help them specifically in those areas. But yes, I try to talk to every coach that I work with from the junior level because I really want my goals to align with their goals because I'm really into the golf specific side of it. There's some trainers that just want to create general athletes, get them more athletic. I think that's great, obviously. But my side is I want to improve their golf game. So I really need to talk to that coach and collaborate.
That's great. Would you say with some of the juniors, especially if on the younger side, do they know their weaknesses or is that something that only the coach would know? Or do you find a lot of juniors able to communicate to you what their weakness is and what they need help in?
Yeah, I think they do. I think, kids nowadays, obviously, they have so much access to information and coaches have unique ways to provide that information to them. Even, all the technology that we have, like 3D motion and all these different things that coaches use now. So I think that a lot of the younger kids, they really know. I'll be working on a drill in the gym with them and, maybe the parents there and they'll say, make sure you tell Scott what you're working on with your coach because he can integrate that into for example, throwing a medicine ball with the right sequence or some sort of a band drill where we practice the same sequence and we don't want to, create problems. We want to match up with the good stuff. And the students usually can tell me, they'll be like, well, I'm working on this and, I'm hanging back too far. And so, they want me to, feel this. Kids are pretty smart. And I work with currently my youngest clients are about 8 years old, I'd say. Historically around 8 years old is about the youngest that I'll go. Although we've had some siblings jump in that are younger at times, but usually around 8 years old is when I'll tell them to start thinking about getting with a trainer, 8 to 10, and learn some workouts at least. Whether they can do them on their own or not is fine.
Yeah. What age would you say is the age they really need to dial it in? I've heard from other people that I've interviewed, from even college coaches to just golf coaches, that when they hit 12, kind of that puberty growth, and then also they jump from 9 holes to 18 holes in tournaments and it's just more competitive. Would you say that's when, from a training standpoint, they need to dial it in, or is that more high school? What age would you recommend to parents to seek out someone like yourself?
Yeah, I would say I guess I'll answer it this way. I would say, I think that each age, you can start younger. It's just that it's important for you to know what you should be working on with an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old versus a 12-year-old. The 12-year-old, I think, is maybe when you get a little more coordinated and you get a little more specific with your training. You might start integrating more strength training. Whereas when you're younger, a lot of it is basic athleticism, flexibility, agility, just trying to get them to be a good athlete. And then maybe working on balance and other things. Because as you know, young kids, their focus, to be able to do a task is not great. So we make them do a lot of balance drills. So it forces their brain to quiet down and figure it out. But yeah, I would say I would agree with that. I think, in the 12 to 13-year-old age, you probably should start thinking about what am I doing exercise wise? Because yes, you are going to jump up in some of the age groups. So for even in Florida, it's our FJT tournaments or whatever is like 13 to 15 division, and you have 16 to 18 division. And per your point, the distances are going to start getting longer and they're going to start playing 18 holes, and you need to physically be prepared for that. So I do think that's a good time to start. And I would follow in line with that recommendation. As far as strength training, like more like, getting like into heavier weights and getting college prep. I think 15 to 16 is a good time to start doing more like strength training and college prep workouts. Just because if you do go to college and that's your goal, you're going to be doing weight training. And oftentimes it's going to be very generic weight training. Sometimes you're going to get a trainer that's not a golf trainer. They're just like a graduate assistant. And they're like, listen, we're doing deadlifts, we're doing bench press, we're doing all these things. And we always want our kids to be, the first time that they do those lifts should not be when they show up at college.
So they know how to even keep themselves safe and protected, right?
But yeah, it's 100% safety issue for me. It's like, making sure they know how to do some of the basic form, knowing their limits, not getting caught up in kind of the peer pressure of, well, do I need to add a plate here or not? Like, no, just go at your own pace, know where you're at. I mean, the more knowledge you have coming in and you can communicate to that strength coach, the more they're going to be willing to work with you. Like, okay, this is a person who, knows what they're doing. They know their limits, and and we can progress them. And I just think it makes it safer all the way around. And it just makes it an easier job for that college coach, because understanding the limits of a college coach, the college coaches often, strength coaches get kind of beaten up a little bit sometimes, because a lot of times people go into their settings and get hurt. And I've had it happen many times where my golfers are completely healthy. They go away to college, they get hurt the first year, and it happens. But you also have to remember oftentimes they're managing, say, 8, 10, 12 athletes on a team, trying to make sure everyone's doing the right form. And you just can't have your eyeballs on everybody at all times.
Right.
So, if your child comes in and they're comfortable with the weight room, they're comfortable with exercise, they're just going to be in a better position.
For sure.
Social media is telling you what you should be doing, and here's this, and remembering that and remembering that what you see on social media is generally like the extremes of something. Nobody's going to post their deadlift unless it's like their max deadlift or whatever. They're not going to post it if the weight's not enough. Well, you won't see that. They only want to show you when it's the max weight. They only want to show you like a speed training drill for golf where they're swinging like so fast that it just looks like they're going to hurt themselves, but it's supposed to be impressive. And so you're seeing a lot of the extreme type exercises on social media. And we need to remind ourselves is like, if that person is at the level where they're doing an extreme exercise, one, it might not be the best thing for them, and they're just doing it for the views. Or two, they've worked really hard to get there and their body's able to handle that. But that doesn't mean that you should think about starting there,
Right.
So exercise, very progressive.
You bring up a really good point, and just even the comparison, even in golf itself, I think there's so many junior accounts, parent run, and it's very hard to not get in that comparison game of even comparing your 8-year-old to someone who's 10 or 12 or older. And then everyone is posting the highlights, right? We're not going to post the 100 putts they missed. We're going to post the one putt they got, and you think it was done on the one time. So do you ever give advice to your students of how to not get caught up in that comparison game? Because the kids that are growing up today are very different than you and I, where we didn't have that social media comparison. So do you ever get into those conversations with them? And if so, what advice do you give to ignore the noise?
Yeah, I mean, I can give lots of stories. I've been, about 25 years training golfers. So I've got kids. There are plenty of late bloomers to golf, meaning like there are kids who, like I've had a couple like female athletes that were like softball players till like age 13, 14, really kind of liked golf, jumped in late, ended up playing college and professional golf. And so what I would say is that like the most important thing is like looking at and evaluating yourself just on a regular basis, like whether it's quarterly or, a couple times a year or yearly, and just looking at and keeping track of some of your data and stuff like that. Like, how far am I hitting the ball right now? How far was I hitting it last year? I think it's important just to look at yourself and see how you're progressing. And the other thing I would say is that a lot of times things you see that are, look great, look fancy, look wonderful. There's still you still have to win tournaments. You still have to hit putts. There's a lot of things that have to happen. Don't forget about cultivating that side of you, because a lot of kids do get caught up, especially now. Like they'll say, oh, I played this tournament and this kid just drove the ball, 30 yards past me on every hole. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, how'd you do in the tournament? Well, I won. I'm like, okay, well, so you won, you hit it, you didn't hit it far enough, but you still won. So there's so many facets to golf. There's the skill shots that maybe you're better at. The key really is evaluating your own personal game, where you're at. If you're bad at chipping and you're bad at putting, but you hit it far, you can't get that far just on hitting it far. You have to develop those other areas of your game. So you might be a little behind in this area, but ahead in this area. And, and those things kind of go. But as long as your general progression is going up, then that's what you're looking for is, looking for those year to year improvements. Don't get caught up in it too much. And your best golf might be ahead of you is something I tell them a lot of times. Your best golf isn't here yet. And you've seen this a lot, I'm sure, but we have a lot of kids, and I've had a lot of kids over the years that they peaked at age 12. That was they went to the U.S. Kids World Championship and won at age 12, but then you never hear of them again. Like you don't, when they're 16, where is that kid? You don't hear about them. So you have to remember that there's burnout, there's all these other things that can happen. And so just keep going on your path, keep trying to get incrementally better. Your scoring, take your metrics, look at those numbers and celebrate your wins along the way. And that's to me the mindset that keeps kids in the game for a longer period of time.
Yeah, well, this is all also helpful. I'm making a lot of mental notes myself for my son. So this is super helpful. Is there anything in your first lesson with someone that you sit down with them and kind of go over rules before you even start? And what would be some of those top 3 rules that you go over with them before they even touch any equipment?
I would say for juniors, the number one rule is just try to focus on what you're doing in that moment. They get distracted, there's just that. And it's not it's just, that's the way their brain is at that age. It's they just get easily distracted on things. So, a lot of it is just talking to them about listen, I'm going to show you how to do an exercise. I want you to do it slow the first few times till you get a feel for it. And then you can pick up the speed, or then we'll give you a heavier load. Don't get frustrated if I'm giving you something and making you go through it slowly, because once you master the form, then I'll leave you and give you more freedom to go for it. So a lot of times we talk about just slowing down your training, slowing down, focusing on quality over quantity is a big one for us. Just putting in teaching them how to put in good reps, which I think applies a lot to golf, because it's very easy to get out there and start hitting balls and you're frustrated with your swing and you're just well, I'll just hit a whole bucket more, instead of maybe take a step back and think about what your coach said and maybe set up a little drill for yourself and slow it down and try to fix it, and then go back and hit a few more and just kind of walk away. So from a body health standpoint, I want the minimum effective dose, so for us, that's something we talk about a lot, is minimum effective dose. It's not more, you don't have to do more. It's not, the maximum amount you can do. It's the quality reps you can do to give you the result and not put extra stress on your body. So just do it slow. Let's focus. With really young ones, you gotta just as a parent, you gotta kind of pick your battles. We talk about, it's in the gym, it's they get a little distracted, they want to run over and do a different thing. Okay, go ahead, come back. Let's go. We're going back on this, you just have to kind of get them back on task. So I'll ask them to stay on task. And that's my main thing. Go slow, stay on task.
I like that. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, with being a father yourself to 4 kids, including athletes themselves and in different areas, would love to hear your take on, just from a personal standpoint as a dad, what you do to give them encouragement. And then how do you handle difficult times, whether it's them losing, being down on themselves, wanting to give up, even though they're still passionate about it, they might just be saying it out of frustration. So if you could talk through a little bit about what you say to your kids and how parents can take away that from your suggestions.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have 4 kids. So I've got two boys and two girls. They've all been in sports at some level. My girls have both done gymnastics at pretty high level. My youngest son played golf for about 3 years. Now he's doing basketball. My oldest son is a junior at the University of Illinois. He's a Division I gymnast. For his, like that was elite. He was always competing at the elite level. The thing I would say is, every kid's different. Obviously, your kid, if they're really sensitive. And I have 4 kids, so I have all different types. Like my youngest daughter, you could be pretty direct with her. Like you could just say, "Hey, why did you do that way? That was like, and then she usually would be like, "Yeah, I don't know what I was doing there." And then it goes away. There's no
Yeah.
drama, right?
Right.
My son was that way. My son, who's a gymnast, he was kind of a kid that like, you know, you could give him a little bit of a criticism on something he was doing, like if you thought he wasn't putting max effort in, and he would kind of just brush it off, and he was fine with it. But some kids are more sensitive, and you need to just think about your words that you're saying to them. Obviously, there's timing. You want to be sensitive to the timing of when you're going to talk to them about it. And the thing I would tell you as a parent is, yeah, you're just going to make a lot of mistakes. You will. Like you're going to fail over and over again. And I think obviously the key is after the failure is coming back and saying to your kid, like, hey, the reason why I was saying that was because of this. I probably shouldn't have said it right at that moment. I was just frustrated for you. I want you to be successful. So one thing would be timing of your words would be advice to you is just timing. And that's something you hear a lot is like, try not to talk about it in the car ride home. Sounds really great. Sounds amazing, but you're going to talk about it on the way home. It happens. Like you're going to do it. And I think the key is just to know your kid and which kid can you talk about it to and which kids like they need a little space, leave them alone. They'll come back. They'll come out later. They'll talk about it later. So timing is a big element, knowing your kid. And then I think obviously, like I said, just staying positive and reminding them that the reason why you care is just you just want them to succeed. Something I would tell you and that I learned is, because I think it's important for you to, be okay with your kid failing, which is really hard. It's so hard to let your kids fail at anything. But I do think it's important that they fail and, you encourage them to get back up, but they kind of make that decision because then they're really owning it. It's their sport. It's not yours. I do think it's important to, be okay with knowing and explain to them like, listen, you are gonna fail a lot and just use some of those classic
Right.
historical stories of athletes who,
Yeah, I think that's key because you're absolutely right. Every kid's going to be different. And some kids, as soon as they get in the car, are going to want to talk about it. And that's your window to probably allow them to talk about it. And then some might need a 24 hours to decompress from everything. But,
yeah,
every
100%.
parent, it's like you have to find within yourself. I've even with my own self, especially being not a golfer, going down this journey, I have not felt qualified many times to be the caddy, be the golf parent. But what I got advice from someone, which is take a step back and you are qualified to be his mom. You know how to like be a mom to him. And that was like a good reality check for me and say that, right, like to your point, I know how he is with his emotions. I know he might be more sensitive to that. Or so it's helped me formulate my words and take away this. I don't need to be an expert in golf, but I can be an expert in what my child needs, emotionally, physically, all
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah,
So that's
100%.
been a good takeaway for me, but I'm still learning too. I still definitely make the mistakes and it's
Hmm.
hard as a parent to not, when they do fail, it is good. I'm happy to see that happen because I'm like, this is building resilience. But then also it,
Hmm.
hurts your heart to see them hurting. So that's probably,
It
my
does.
growing edge too, is to not align his emotions with and turn them into my emotions.
That's very
That's
important.
yes, I know, right? Talk to me, Scott, about what separates juniors who consistently improve and those who just completely plateau.
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously lots of factors there for sure. I think definitely having like for the kids that succeed. So I work with a lot of junior academies, like elite academies, different top instructors, and some remote, some in person here in Central Florida from around the country. And so I've seen a lot of the kids come through. And again, kids will come through in different phases. You don't always know. Like some of the kids that were the most successful for me, I would have probably said, I wouldn't have guessed that actually. But sometimes kids will turn a corner and they start really getting serious about their sport. I would say obviously the number one thing is they hang in there. A lot of people just quit. They're right on the edge of like getting some breakthroughs and they quit. Like, so the kids that kind of hang in there and really just keep developing themselves, and whether that's because they have positive parents who are encouraging them and, obviously financially helping them by getting them the lessons that they need, taking them to the tournaments to build that, that get that tournament practice where you're playing against other people and competing. But really just staying in it is important. And part of the way to stay in it to me is to make sure that it becomes like a part of your life, like in a bigger way than it can't feel like it's like a job, like if this is a job, then, as kids get older, when they turn 14, 15, 16, and, they're going to practice and they're seeing their friends are all going to do all these other fun things, you're probably going to have some pushback. You're probably going to have some kids who they're not as focused. They're less distracted. So I think, it helps for them to find a friend group that they can play golf with, that they can push each other with. I've had a few through the years that are just kind of unbelievable. Like I have a friend group now from a local club that I worked with of kids, like three of like six of them are professional golfers now. They always used to play together every afternoon. And it was definitely not like, I mean, this, once they reached a certain age, like say that when they were, 13 or so, they would play the golf course. There's no parents. It was a group of boys. They're going out playing. They're competing against each other. They get some good competitive banter going and they spur each other on. And I think that can be good if you can find a good friend group. But a lot of that ties back into the one quality that I think is number one is just having some competitiveness, which to me is like, do you care? Like when you lose, do you care? I mean, if you care when you lose, like in sports, then you're going to want to go back and say, I've got to fix my putting. I've got to be better with my chipping. I've got to be better. I need to hit the ball further. You're going to be in that continual improvement cycle. So to me, the kids that always end up being the most successful are the ones who are kind of competitive. And I don't mean like outwardly competitive, aggressive towards other kids. I mean, like internally, like they want to win and it matters to them. And they're not just doing it for their parents, they're doing it for themselves. And so that's a quality that if you can cultivate competition in your kids, whether it's even just like, you'll know this too, is like you guys play a board game around the house or something, or you've got a pickup basketball game outside and you're playing horse or something like that, or some sort of game. And it's like, if you can cultivate competition, that will help you go really far.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like that is great advice. Because even like with my son, I've noticed frustration will come out in Legos and other things too. So I've realized, okay, it might not necessarily even be golf. It's probably this he wants to do well. He doesn't want to mess up. Maybe a perfectionist is in him, but as a parent, it's like our job to kind of hone in on those skills because then they can apply it to other areas in life, right? Not just golf, but that's great advice. For busy golfers with limited time, Scott, what are the top 3 exercise routines that really give the biggest performance return that you would recommend?
Well, I'm kind of annoying because I'm very custom. So whenever I get questioned like this, I truly believe that people should look at themselves about what those 3 things are. So for me, like looking at myself, like I've always been really naturally flexible, like just could move pretty good. I was never fast in sports. I played basketball. I could not get down the court fast enough. I was too slow for the game. I had good vision and I was good at shooting, but I wasn't strong enough and I wasn't fast enough to compete with the bigger kids when I got to the highest levels. So I do think that every kid is at a different phase. If you have a kid who like, for example, like my son as a gymnast, he was just always naturally really strong. Okay. And so you could kind of check that box and say like, well, if I've got limited time, I don't maybe need to do as much strength. Maybe I need to do more stretching. So maybe I need to do more like maybe some core work or some stretching, or maybe I'm strong, but I'm slow. So I need to I should go do some program where I do some cardiovascular work and run some sprints or something like that. I'm speaking to the junior right now, not to the everyday golfer, but a junior golfer, I would look at some of their qualities. Like, are they athletic? Are they coordinated? If you can't skip a rope, if you can't jump rope, I think you should be able to. I think you should be able to check all those boxes. Like if I ask you to jump up on a box and you're either afraid of it or you just literally can't jump high enough, you should probably start working on exercises to overcome that fear and also just to build some of that general power. Like I said, if you're slow or if you, for example, you're weak, then I think you should do strength exercises. Not to stereotype in any way, but obviously like a lot of the young female golfers that we work with, they maybe have a little smaller forearms and wrists and things like that. And so, they can't really like hit the ball as hard, and they can't, sometimes if they try to swing too fast, they lose their wrist angles. So I would have them work on a lot more general upper body strength and like doing push-ups and trying to do like pull variations and working on grip strength, like getting one of these flex bars and bending it and gripping and doing exercises like that. So my thing would be to look at yourself, know your weaknesses, and say, what are my top 3 in that hierarchy of needs that I should work on? And so I'll give you an example. It's like how old is your son?
8.
The golfer. He's 8. So in class, like at school, if they run a sprint, like where is he going to finish in that group? Do you know? Like, is he going to be one of the fastest kids, or is he going to be in middle of the pack or slowest?
Definitely on the faster side, and part of it's he's on the taller side too, so his longer
Okay.
legs.
Right. Okay. So longer legs, that's another thing. Okay. So a lot of times, sometimes kids that are getting a little more longer legs, they get some growth spurts. Sometimes they're losing coordination. So I might say for
Yes.
him, part of his program might be to do some focused balance work, almost like yoga type things, like standing on one leg and extending out and, things that are going to help him get more stability and balance with his body if he's already naturally fast. And then let's
Yeah.
say maybe number 2, we just did some basic screening on him. Like, remember what you did in school, like the sit and reach test? Like, how well is he
Yes.
going to do on a sit and so if he's tight, if he's tight and he's reaching down, only touching his knees or his shins, and he can't get down and he's really restricted there, then it's possible that some flexibility work might be the most important thing for him. So my answer to the question is really, customize what you need most in that moment. And also age related, like what we talked about before, when you should start lifting weights.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that. Great advice. I think it's awesome that you customize it to each individual too, so it's not just a standard cookie cutter thing. Because as you're right, no golfer is the same, right? What
exactly
would
right.
you
We all have different
say
problems.
exactly, Scott? What would you say are the myths and misconceptions do golfers, especially parents, have about fitness and performance training?
I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions about it. I mean, some parents like there's the extremes. So you kind of have some parents who are like, well, like golf is a skill sport. It's very technical. We don't really need to we don't need to think about fitness. We just need to learn how to like, how do I hit a 50-yard shot versus an 80-yard shot? How do I, like very much like there's some people think a misconception is that just because it's a high technical skill sport, you shouldn't consider adding in elements of overall fitness. And then another big one, which is a big misconception in my world, is that among fitness is like, well, you shouldn't do anything in your workout that like looks like the golf swing. Like they'll say, well, you don't need to take a band and stretch it into this position or whatever. They'll say that, just go do push-ups or go do squats or whatever. And I mean, I think that, it's valid that you shouldn't ignore general fitness, but also you can't ignore that like when you get golf instruction, they're telling you like, okay, you need to have this here. You need to have this ability to move here. I'd like to get your hands up in this position, that elbow, let's get that in this position on the way down. So golf instruction is very technically specific. So there are things you could do in the gym to match up and work on those patterns. And you can get some really nice direct improvement by working on that. So don't be afraid or don't believe the hype when somebody says, don't do an exercise that just looks like a golf swing. Because, at a young age, you're trying to develop a pattern in your body. And that pattern is that golf swing pattern. So in my opinion, the more that you do something that's similar to that pattern, the better you're going to be. And, an example would be like differences between like a baseball swing versus a golf swing. And, if I do a lot of drills that are just very rotary up here, is that going to transfer into what I need down here?
Sure.
Not necessarily. And could I also start creating bad habits by rotating the wrong way with my body? So we want to build that pattern. Once you have that pattern and you have it set and you've got that pattern, that's a great pattern. Then what we need to start thinking about is like, so say you're a high level, high achieving golfer, is that don't forget that you should be doing things that balance your body out. So a lot of people will say, just do squats or lunges or bench press or whatever. And they might say, you don't need all these like kind of PT, physical therapy type stretches and exercises. That's not important. But if you play a lot of golf, you're going to develop patterns because your body's always working one way. And a lot of that rehab type exercise stuff is helpful for reducing injuries because you're trying to balance out your body and not have such tight muscles on one side versus the other. So don't believe people who say that stuff's worthless.
Right. Great points. On that note, what would you say? And I've heard a variety of opinions on this, and I don't really have one or the other, but thoughts on kids doing multiple sports and golf. Do you see that as a benefit or a hindrance or somewhere in between?
This is my opinion on the multiple sports thing. Okay. So one thing that people will notice is they'll say, oh, you should play multiple sports. Because we've seen that a lot of good golfers, a lot of professional golfers, when they were growing up, they played multiple sports, right? And so there's this idea that we're going to correlate. Well, if you're a professional golfer, playing all those sports when you were younger, that could have been a difference maker for you. I don't know. I'm not sure. My attitude on professional golf is it's a highly technical skill. So it's a little bit different, just like gymnastics is a little different. There's so much time you need to spend figuring out how to do the skill of golf that you don't have as much time left over to play those other sports. It's not like if you're, just baseball and football or basketball. I mean, obviously there's skill in there for sure, but some of the positions, it's not like you're going to see somebody working as much as a golfer might put in 20 hours a week training or more between rounds of golf and practice. You usually don't see that with other sports, basketball players, things like that. So it's such high skill that it doesn't fit into the same category as everything else. You can get really good at golf by just working on the skill of golf. And if you start playing other sports, if it's taking your time away from your golf, then I would say on one side, that could be a negative. And
Sure.
also, when you think about it, when they say like, oh, multi-sport athletes, well, the reality is like what I think you're seeing there is that, yes, if you're a multi-sport athlete, which means if you're a kid who's like, hey, I want to play football, basketball, baseball, all these sports, and I do really well in them, what you're really telling me is you have a really athletic kid. And so this kid is athletic and you could put them almost in any sport and they're going to end up doing pretty good. And the question is, if golf is their sport, at what point in time do they need to commit solely to golf? I would say like around that 12-year-old, 13-year-old age, if you're playing like flag football and you're playing
Right.
youth basketball, soccer, whatever, when you get to be around the age, I'd say 13, you probably want to be thinking like, I need to commit most of my time to golf. If golf is my goal at college, understanding that college coaches are going to be looking at you within 3 years, 2 or 3 years, and you probably need to get your scoring to where it needs to be by that time.
I see. So if you're on the path to college for golf and that is what you want to let go of the other ones. But if you're good at golf, dabbling, but maybe you want to go for the football scholarship, you should probably just go all in with football.
Yeah, I think around, I would say just now, this is just the reality of now. I mean, in the past it might have been a lot different. I think it was a lot different in the past, but now we have much more specialization in sports.
Right.
So in the past, you might have played other sports. You'll see people out there who made it to the NFL, but they were also a really good basketball player. And that's understandable and that's fine because, again, generally the best athlete wins when you're at the high school level. It's not necessarily the most skilled athlete always that wins. Sometimes it's just the kid that's faster, bigger, taller,
Yeah.
stronger. They
And to your
win.
point, they would excel in any sport you put them in because of their size or their abilities, right?
Yeah, physical, natural gifted physical abilities that they have. It was just for ultimately a really coordinated kid. But, your kid or my kid could be much less coordinated and just destroy them in golf because it's a skill sport and they have to learn how to do it. So I think if you're 13 and, you're good at golf, like you've been playing and you're doing some competitive golf and, you can look at your scoring and you're a good player, And, you may want to dedicate yourself to that sport and just say, I'm just going to play golf. That's what I'm going to do. Am I saying don't play pickup basketball with your friends? Don't play intramurals. Don't do that. Of course. I mean, I want you to do all of those things. I don't want you to become a kid who parents, historically, like, well, we can't go skiing because you could hurt yourself or this or
Yeah.
whatever. You know
Yeah.
how it
Right.
gets, right?
Oh, yeah.
And if your kid stays in sports, you will be that parent, because I was that parent for my son with gymnastics. It's like you're so afraid they're like gonna,
Probably knew how to jump off better than any of us, right?
yeah, like exactly, like you're okay with this guy. But that's how we'll get that way. The better your kid gets at a sport, the more it means to you, the more it matters. I would encourage you, if that happens to you, and something I've tried to do for myself, is that the further that my son has gone in gymnastics, is the more I let go of it myself. I just let go of it and I just say it's going to be what it's going to be. I'm thankful for every day that he gets to compete, and just taking it all in and enjoying it and just being thankful for it, and just really letting go of my personal expectations, because you really you got to you can't live and die through your kids' success and failures, and it'll tear you up. And so you just let it go and you say they're going to do their best and we're going to be here to support it. My son at NCAA championships missed All American status at Division 1 by probably like a tenth or 2/10. And I think that if I was really the way I was almost when he was a junior, that might have destroyed me. Like, oh my gosh, he could have been an All American. But instead, I flipped it around to like, hey, you almost made All American. Like, change your mindset with it
Right.
as to
Just
the
even
good
come
side.
this far is an
Yes.
accomplishment.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's helped me a lot. So like I don't live and die by what happens in there. I'm just enjoying it. Just be the
Yeah.
parent, like you said, be the supportive person for them. And so that's important as well.
I love that. That's a great reminder because when I talk to parents of older kids too, they're like, you're going to miss these days so much, 10, 20 years from now. So to just embrace the moment. And you're right, don't tie any outcome to how you feel. Just be like, I'm thankful that they're able to play today and we'll see what tomorrow holds, right?
Yeah. And for golf, you think about golf, it's really amazing because one of the things with golf is my son is in business school, my oldest son, the one who's a gymnast. And I wish I would have started him in golf, because the thing about golf is, let's say your kid gets to the point where they're like, listen, mom, I just don't want to do competitive golf anymore. Okay, that's going to be a really sad day for all of us. But guess what? You actually also just learned a really valuable skill that you can play this game the rest of your life and enjoy it with friends and use it for business and all these other things. Like other sports that you do, when football's over, it's kind of over. When, basketball's over, it's over. When gymnastics is over, there's no league to go to. You're just done. So take in that part is for your kid and remind them is like, this is an awesome skill you're going to have. I wish I would have learned to play golf when I was younger. I didn't start like trying to play any golf till I was in college. So, there's that side of it too, which is like, hey, this is something you're going to have for the rest of your life that you have. And, it's going to be valuable to you in lots of other ways.
Absolutely. And I try to remember that for myself or my son. And just if he comes out more well rounded, able to talk to adults, and hopefully as a teenager, even if he's not playing competitively, that he wants to go out for 3 hours with mom and dad on the golf course and spend undivided time with us, like that will just be a win in my book. So
Oh,
I try to
yeah.
keep that
Yeah.
perspective, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Because, yeah.
Another one of my last questions for you, Scott, is a breakthrough moment from a junior or professional that you've worked with that illustrates just mindset beyond the fitness ability, the technical ability. How has their mindset really taken them to the next level?
It's hard to think of one. I mean, we've had lots
Yeah,
over the years of lots of
sure.
different players with their mindset overcoming things. Like, I mean, I was there for my LPGA player the first time she won on the LPGA. She was in the lead on the back nine by like 2 strokes, and the person who was chasing her was Annika Sorenstam. So that was like that's tough. She's the world number one, and so
Yeah.
that mindset of, and I would say the reason if I talked to her about it afterwards is just taking it shot by shot. It's very easy for you to think like, well, I'm 2 strokes ahead, but let's say Tiger Woods is chasing me. Well, if I'm thinking about Tiger Woods chasing me, this is probably over. We're done. Like it's going to get in my head and we're going to be done.
Yeah.
But kind of a one shot at a time, thought process, I think, is very important. And so I've seen that happen and many times at the professional level. I would say coming back from injuries is huge. When you get an injury, I've had a couple kids, like I had a student last year who won the Florida State Championship, had come back from an injury the year before. When you have an injury, it's very easy for you to get caught up in kind of a doubt mindset, which is like, well, am I going to be able to, like, if it hurts to swing a golf club, am I ever going to be able to swing a golf club without this pain? And when you're in the middle of it, you really can't see that light at the end. But I would say again, is like you focus on day to day, you break it down to smaller moments. Okay. Today I could do this. Yesterday I couldn't do that. And you just have to work your way back. You got to look at the small picture for a little while before you can look back at the big picture. And like I said, I had a student who had a pretty serious injury, came back, won the number one Florida State championship high school golfer last year.
Incredible.
I had the number one Florida State high school golfer this year too. They just finished this week. So we had two of my students finish first and third. Yeah, we're
Wow,
super
that's
proud of
really
them. And they just, Florida's a great competitive state for golf. So when you win high school championships, it doesn't always mean as much. But in Florida, I think it means a lot. I mean, you're competing against Charlie Woods and Tiger's son and things like that. So you're competing against some of the best kids in the country. So when you win those, that's really exciting. But no, I can't, I've worked with the senior world long drive champion, Eddie Fernandez, two years ago. He had an injury and a surgery. And again, this is a multiple time world champion in long drive. And he's a very big mindset guy and he's super positive. He's like, when he first came in to see me, we thought, okay, we might be able to get this better. We worked on it for a little while. It was improving. But when you went back to long drive, that pain was still there. So he ended up having to have a surgery. And as he came out of that surgery, there's all those questions. It's like, will I be able to swing this club? I mean, this guy's swinging the club 150 miles an hour. It's crazy. And so, you're thinking that, but his mindset was very show up every day, do the work, listen to your coaches. He just listen to me. Here's what I want you to do today. Don't do this yet. Just trust your process, trust your parents, trust your coaches. And just, take each day one step at a time and you can get back on top. And so he came back after that injury and won the world championship again. So pretty cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
What an amazing story. I actually if he's interested, I'd love you to connect me. He'd be a great podcast for you if he's
100%.
interested.
Eddie, oh yeah, he would definitely do it. He's great. He's and he's got a lot of insight on mindset. He talks a lot about mindset. He works with mental coaches and things like that. He's very big on mindset. And he'd be a great person to talk to because when you think about long drive, one of the things about long drive is, golf, it's like you hit a bad shot, you got the next shot, you have a bad hole, you got the next hole. They're up there. It's like they got to hit this ball as hard as they can. They got to get it in that grid and they only have a certain number of shots. So the mindset is very strong. It's like, I have to get this ball in this grid. So that's a really good person to talk to about mindset because they're working on a different pressure level than an average golfer is. So that's kind of an interesting, for sure. I'll connect you with him. Absolutely. 100%. He's a great guy. Yeah.
Thank you. Scott, I've kind of gone through all my questions, but before we wrap up, is there anything that I haven't touched on that you'd like to share or a question that I could ask you just to be able to pull out more information? So you are very wise, and I feel like this has been such a great interview, and I feel like a lot of parents are going to get a lot out of this.
Yeah, not really. I guess, being a physical therapist, a lot of people ask me about injuries, overcoming injuries or how to avoid injuries. So if you want to ask about that, I can give some tips on that.
Sure.
That's a big one that happens a lot is we'll get that. But no, we covered a lot of different areas. Yeah, we could, if you want to ask a question about that, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. As a physical therapist, you see a lot of injuries, and what advice do you have for juniors and also parents to avoid injuries? And then if they do have an injury, what steps should they take to overcome it and heal and get back on the golf course as soon as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that if your kid is really into golf, they're really wanting to continue working on it. Like they want to just not stop. They're like, let's go hit some more balls. Let's go. So I think a big tip is to make sure they understand that they're somehow tracking what they're doing in a way, or you're tracking and saying, okay, that's it. We're done. We're moving on because, more is not always better. So we talk about quality over quantity, but especially with drills. So drills are that swing instructors will give you drills. They're trying to correct your movement pattern. So you have something you're doing in your body and we're like, this isn't right. We've got to re-ingrain a better pattern. So we're going to give you these drills. Well, drills often are kind of like a little more extreme movement. So that means that they're more likely to injure you if you do too many of them. If your coach says, like, listen, I want you to do this drill and you're going to work on like this impact position or you're going to work on this downswing position and, just make sure you ask the coach, like, how often should I do that? How many should I do? Because the child needs to know that there's a limit to that because sometimes their brain will be like, let me do more of this drill because I'm really trying to fix this. Like trying to fix a problem in one day that is a pattern you've been swinging this way for like 2 years. You're not going to change this in one day. So
Right.
work on it, and then step away. So I think it's really important to know when to step away or to tell your child like, hey, okay, that's enough. Don't just keep in other sports, like especially in gymnastics, like we talk about, but they'll call it like chucking a skill where it's like, I'm just going to keep throwing this skill until I get it. It's some sort of a flip. And I'm just going to keep doing it until I figure it out. And it's like, no, this isn't the best idea. Instead, take a step back, break down the movement a little bit, work on some of the parts and pieces of the movement, and then
Yeah.
bring it back together and try again instead of just keep throwing this movement. So understand there's a process for improvement. Don't overdo it. Also, if you're chasing distance or speed, you need to be aware of your body positions. You need to be aware, like, yes, I want to work on my speed. So I'm going to hit some balls and try to hit it further. Fine. Let's think about one, how many balls are we going to hit? Maybe we should only hit 10 or 15 of these max drivers to try to get our speed ramped up, not hit, 40 of them or 30 of them where we're going to hurt ourselves. Am I swinging as hard as I can, but still maintaining good form and balance? If I'm losing my balance and my form, I could get injured. And also, it's not going to transfer to the ball anyway. So why am I doing that? So it's like, yeah, swing it as fast as you can, but within good swing mechanics, not some of these things you see people just wildly swinging like these speed clubs and all this stuff. And it's like
Mhm.
wrapping around their spine. And you're thinking like,
Yes.
gosh, this is not going to be good for this kid. Short term, it's
Right.
going to be great. They'll win a lot of trophies when they're younger, but they might get injured and you never hear of them again. So I think that's
Right.
important to not overdo it with extreme training and then just really watching your numbers. And that's good. And then, a lot of times when people say, how do you avoid injuries? People often talk about, well, you need to make sure you do a really good warm up. Well, I think that advice most fits people our age. Like kids are a little kind of plastic and they don't really need quite as much warm up, but
Right.
a good general warm up makes sense. And then it also makes sense is how you structure your.
Scott, are you still there? You still there? Okay. It cut out for a sec. Oh, no worries. Just on the last part you were saying, just start right there. Sure. I love that. Scott, you've been so knowledgeable, so helpful for myself, for the parents listening. I would love for you to share with everyone listening how they can find you and contact you, which of course will be in the show notes. Thank you so much, Scott. Really enjoyed having you. If you are listening or watching this episode, we please encourage you to share with other parents and like and follow us on Instagram. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.